Welcome everyone to People, Their Passion and Purpose. So today I'm with Melanie Jade Boulerice, right?
Yes.
Pronouncing it right.
Yep.
And Melanie is a nurse and entrepreneur. Her business is called Nomadic Nurse Network. She's not only just a nurse and an entrepreneur, she's also Melanie, and which is very important, and especially because that's how I met you first. And just to introduce you also as a person that I know, Melanie, as soon as I met you, it was through my other business. You have this amazing energy. You are engaged, you put yourself out there, you feel for people, you're kind to people, you care about people, you care about humanity, and it really shows with everything that you do, how you hold yourself, where you go, what you do when you're out there. And I always appreciated that energy from you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow, a nice introduction. Thank you. Yeah, honestly, when it comes down to where I'm at in my life, or when it comes down to being a nurse, and we have this very big nurturing component. And if you're a nurse, you know what I'm talking about, because like you cannot be a nurse and have no nurturing component in your bones. Like you have to have that, and it takes a lot of courage, but also it's a big reminder of us. We have to remind ourselves a lot of times of like who we are in that component. So yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and lately I've been watching your journey for a few years. And lately you've been on a bit of a new path. It's always the same path, but it's growing, it's changing, it's transforming. So I want to get to that, but let's just give everybody an idea of where you're coming from and how you started as getting into a nurse and where that passion came from, and talk a little bit about your purpose there.
For sure. So as a nurse, I was I my well the biggest thing is that I always say as a nurse, it's so funny, but really I'm as a human, like that's where it all began, right? So I didn't come out of the womb as a nurse, and that's the thing that
Right.
we have, like a lot of us and our career paths end up thinking a lot of the times we end up believing, eat, breathing, sleeping our careers. But basically, what started with me is that my parents used to watch the show ER in the 90s, and I used to sit in front of it and I would want to watch all the time.
What?
And I called it Yeah, I loved it, loved it, loved it. I used to want to watch Dr. Green all the time. And the most interesting part about it is that it was probably the most realistic medical show that has been on television. And it was a it was honestly, it was a really, really good show. The one thing, and I used to watch it all the time. And growing up, I would go to Florida to visit my family, my mom's side of the family, and I had family members that were health professionals, and one of my cousins became a nurse. And it was just, it became very inspiring until one day my aunt was so funny. She wanted me to go with her to go visit she was a caregiver for and like some elderly folks in Florida. And she says, "Oh, well, why don't you come with me to see some of them and go to the residents and feed some patients and whatnot?" I was like, "All right, no problem." I was 12 at the time. And for some reason, my aunt thought it was like the cutest thing to put me in a sari to do it. So my aunt dresses me up in this blue, beautiful, like royal blue sari, takes me all around South Florida to go and take care of these people. And I'm sitting down feeding this one lady, and I just see a tattoo on her arm. See a tattoo on her arm, and I'm like, "Oh, like where's that from?" And she at this point had dementia. But she ended up talking about she told me everything that happened to her, and that tattoo was a tattoo from the time she was in the Holocaust. And she actually shared her story. She actually shared her story with me like it was the most realist time. And then it's almost like her confusion stopped, she told me the story. And then after, when like our time was up, she was all of a sudden like back to her little pleasant, confused self again. But it was just interesting because like the story that I heard from that woman was astronomically insane for a 12-year-old to even apprehend and like what was going on, but for some reason it shook me, and I'm like, okay, like I need to be doing something like this. But I obviously didn't understand what it was. So then after I grow up, and then I said, I CEGEP time, it's time to apply to CEGEP. And I got into the science program at John Abbott. I saw physics all over my schedule, and I said, no, I'm not doing this. I could not stand physics in high school. I will not stand it in CEGEP. I went into nursing, and it just so happened to have worked. I'm very, very blessed that it worked. Did the program, went through my struggles, and been working in emergency ever since. And I've absolutely loved it. I did do some time in doing management. I loved that as well. And yeah, and then I evolved into the entrepreneurial life, and now I am here as a travel
Yeah.
nurse.
So just roll it back for a second because you just have me in in a bit of awe because I never knew. And that's why I love doing this show so much because I really learn about people from, where things started, and that's what this program is all about. It's like there's always a reason. And it was almost, to me, it sounds like inherent in your family genes that you were in this caregiver role. Now,
Hmm.
I can't lie. When you told me about the tattoo on the arms, my heart dropped because I'm a Jewish woman,
Hmm.
and it's not an easy time for us these days. So I'm just going to put it out there. So you got me a little bit, you know, you got my heart there. And but to think that you were 12 years old, and I don't know exactly what she told you, but I'm sure whatever it was pretty heavy because the Holocaust was a horrible time for her. And you actually, instead of running away, it was your sign to say, wow, this is something I can do at
Hmm.
12.
Yeah, I look back and I'm like, I don't think I don't expect any 12-year-old to react the way I did. Not saying, not to give glory to myself on that moment, because again, like, but something told me to stay and listen to this woman and just like
Yeah.
continue to feed her and make her feel comfortable and whatnot. And
Mm.
it was just, I remember it very well, like in that moment of just making sure that she was well fed. And it's just the prestige of this, where she was in, like her family really took care of her. Um, and she was able, like, she wanted to share these stories with she still needed an outlet after everything that she's been through. So it was one of those things where I knew that I had the gift of serving and healing in order to help others.
Yeah, yeah, holding space, you held some space for her. Wow,
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. And then, going to CEGEP and then seeing the physics and then, and you're like, right away you got turned off. Yeah, so I'm glad that for you that you found nursing, and I'm glad that nursing found you. And you were able to express yourself in those in that way,
Mhm.
yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you. It
Yeah.
was I learning how to navigate when I realized when I listen, physics, as much as I had a great physics teacher in high school, I just did not like ask me to drop a ball, no problem. Ask me to measure how the ball is dropping, the inertia behind, no thank you. But the funny thing is that when you work in emergency trauma, you have a little physics to work with because you want to know how fast they've been going, were they belted, and all these other things.
Right, right.
It determined the high impact of it. So it's just physics found me in a funny way
Yeah.
after.
It got you in the end. It got you in the
Oh, it
end.
did. It got me in the
Yeah,
end. I had to
yeah.
learn it at some point.
Yeah. And then, so you studied nursing and then you got into some marketing, and it sort of makes sense that you took your nursing and your marketing and you have this entrepreneurial spark, in you. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so tell me a little bit about how the progression into that, and what the entrepreneurial part of your work does for you, and how you keep in touch with your nursing and your caring side, you know?
So social media is a beautiful thing as it can be very dangerous in so many ways. And I'm going to talk about the beauty of social media, not in not what and I don't want everyone to forget about the the certain negative impacts, because anything in surplus is obviously not good. Like, we love candy, but we can't have all of it, right? So the thing is that when I started going into when I was about 2, 3, I was about 3 years in nursing. Instagram was just like becoming more popular. I think I think I saw Instagram while I was in nursing school in like 2012 or whatnot, but I didn't really care about it beforehand. Big thing was Facebook at the time. And when Instagram kicked in, you're communicating, you're posting your stuff, and you're getting used to this. And then all of a sudden you're seeing people that are getting hundreds of likes on things, and you're like, what is this all about? And then you start following more people. Listen, there's nothing that did it like Instagram. There's nothing that did it like Instagram. And if there's anything that was before that, it was MySpace. I always loved tweaking my Pixel website, my MySpace. Like, I'm putting myself in a time warp here. I always enjoyed playing around with that. But I never took it as marketing. I took it as playtime. Like, when
Okay.
I was young, right? I thought it was just like I did like, and it was easy to get wrapped up in that era. But as I grew, and then Instagram kicked in, we started playing around with it, and then all of a sudden I started noticing I wanted to follow some nurses, because I'm like, I'm a nursing student or just about to become a nurse. Let me
Mhm.
find some nursing people. So I started searching, and I found Nurse Mo, who was a nurse in LA, who was a travel nurse. And it was funny because when I was 18 in nursing school, I did I went back to Florida for a summer visit, and I knew that I'm like, I want to do travel nursing. That was the moment that I wanted to do travel nursing. And I said, well, who else is doing this out there? Who else
Mhm.
is doing travel nursing? This who else is taking on this very interesting role that I've never heard of in Canada? So I found Nurse Mo, I found of other nurses, but Nurse Mo was the one that really stood out to me. And then I started following her. And then one day I says, I think I can do something like this. Did I get to am I at Nurse Mo's level in social media marketing? I'll be honest, I'm not, but she's incredible. But I definitely look at her and a couple other nurse influencers as inspiration. But at that time, it was a lot of, okay, well, what am I going to post? And then my first post that I did about nursing, I was a post of my coffee mug and a stethoscope, and I got 600 likes. And because the
Wow.
post after that did really well, and this was it, say 20. And I'm like, I'm like, what is going on? Like, and at that time, getting 500 likes, the algorithm was hot, completely different. It was
Yeah.
a whole other it was a whole other thing. And I said, like, well, why can't I share this message that of my love for the profession, and how can
Yeah.
I help others? How can I be the nurse role model that I wish I had physically in this area? So that's how I really tapped into it. And Instagram was a really, really beautiful way of doing that. Again, it's one of those things where you have to find a proper balance. You cannot just think that social media is going to be your gateway ticket for everything. You have to diversify your life. But marketing was literally by accident. Like, it was a complete
Mm.
accident. It was not supposed to be. I was supposed to be, I saw myself as a head nurse graduating or as a travel nurse. But
Okay.
now I mean, I did management, but I don't see myself as a head nurse. I see myself in very different, way different light than when I graduated. And I think it's very important that we understand, like, marketing is such a beautiful tool, and it's such a superpower when you use it for good, when you use it
Yeah.
to help others. Like, you have to keep in mind that marketing is to serve the community at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
how are you going to touch the hearts of others? How are you going to find ways of helping others. And nursing was just so, it was just so easy. But the thing is that we don't necessarily, as healthcare professionals, understand marketing because there's so many laws. Oh, I don't want people to come after me, or boards to come after me because I'm breaking HIPAA laws. You don't have to, like, you're not breaking a HIPAA law by saying your experience with keeping the patient's name out of the conversation,
Mm,
or out of, like, don't say where you work. Like, there's certain things that, like, you can you can steer away from to protect yourself and protect the patient, but
mhm,
also to help voice the thoughts voice the thoughts of what's going on in the system.
mhm,
So it's a very it's a very touch and go. And I think I was very blessed and fortunate over my time to be at like to over the my time being on the platform to
mhm,
share, because I was very well appreciated for my roles, especially with where I was employed. I was very fortunate to be in a place where they would be supportive of my social media journey. So it
mhm.
was
Yeah.
definitely fun. It's been fun.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just a natural thing for you to do, you know? So, you are who you are and you bring it out and share it, and you share it with the same care that you give to your patients, when you're working with patients or when you're managing in a management position, then the staff, So, it's interesting how it's all coming together for you, and
Thank you.
how, yeah, like with your different parts of your personality, you're able to care for people, express what you're doing, share what you're doing, encourage other people, uh, you know. So that's really wonderful. And so tell me something, how in your nursing career, other than that time when you were 12 and you were speaking to that woman in Florida, do you have any other stories that you could share with us about an experience that made you feel like, yeah, I'm in the right place, like I'm totally in the right place?
Oh, okay. So there has been, when I was in nursing school, this is the time when I realized I loved emergency trauma.
Mm,
This was probably like, this was the moment where I realized, like, I'm going to be in the right place. So
mm,
I was in my my last year, second to last semester of nursing school. And I get a patient, a young gentleman that was, like, I think 22, got into a car accident. And my nursing teacher was like, I'm going to assign him to you, but I'm not like, and then we were working on a surgical floor. We were doing our stage on a surgical floor. And she's like, listen, I'll assign him to you, but I'm not going to guarantee that he's going to want a student, or if he wants you, or we'll see where it goes. I'm like, all right, well, like, give him to me. I'll take on the challenge. I'm gonna have to do this at some point, right? So she's like, all right, no problem. So I took on the challenge, and he ended up telling me that this guy, he was a tough character, but I think he was also scared of what he was going through. He was at that time, again, 22, got into a car accident, had to get abdominal surgery. And then I had him for about 2 days. He ended up telling me at one point that, oh, my stomach is hurting and whatnot. And he had a tube in his nose that's going into his stomach. And he's like, my belly's feeling
mm,
really distended, and, like, I'm not feeling comfortable. And we call the doc. I tried to get in hold of the doctor. Doctor's in emergency surgery. And after, like, a couple of hours, we're, like, trying to reach out to somebody to come see, because they were in a very serious surgery. Finally, I bump into a resident and said, listen, like, I need help. Like, this guy is, like, his belly is ballooning, like, it's getting really big. Long story short, ended up coming in. He needed to go back to emergency surgery because his intestines perforated. Which is it's an unfortunate, but can be a common complication depending on the surgery that you've received. He had to go back for emergency surgery, and this was, again, like, 3 days post-operative. and it just had a weak spot in his intestine, and he went back into surgery. And at that moment, the rush of everything, of getting the stat CT, getting the stat x-rays, to getting the blood work, to calling the doctor, to determining a plan, working them with the multidisciplinary team, all while I was the lovely age of 20 years old. I cannot believe I was 20 years old. Like I did not, I still think about these things. I'm like, I was 20 years old in the middle of a situation like that. I'm like, and that's when I knew. I'm like, I think I like trauma. I think I
Yeah.
like a emergency room.
Yeah.
So that was definitely
Yeah.
one, but the one where it confirmed it for me, which was actually during the pandemic. There's a couple of them that confirmed it for me, but this
Yeah.
one, I did a post on it, and it really struck my core. This is what probably struck me when it came down to the healthcare system. So we had a gentleman come in, heart failure, young. He was like in his early 40s, I would say. He was in heart failure for a congenital disorder, a congenital heart disease that he had growing up. And all of a sudden, his condition started to deteriorate. We had to bring him to the trauma room so we could work on him a little bit more aggressively and closely. He ended up having to get he had to get an ECMO done in the emergency room. So it's a code that we have in a certain, and only I think we're like one of the few in North America that offer it where I used to work. And we started a code ECMO on this patient. He was warranted for one. This man was so patient, so calm. And I would turn over every so often, be like, "Are you okay?" Because this guy had two big tubes, like this big, in his by both of his groin, like both sides of his groin,
Wow.
and there's blood flowing it to try to, and the pump and the ECMO machine is working as hard as lungs to oxygenate the blood because his heart is failing.
Right.
So we're doing this live in an emergent, like in the emergency
Yeah.
room, finally get him transferred to a unit. But during that time when we were trying to get him a bed in ICU, keep in mind we had to transfer him to another institution, and that was probably the one moment where I was actually scared, because I'm like, this patient may not. And keep in mind, I didn't understand management as much at that time. So
Mhm.
I'm sitting there like, this patient may not even is at risk of not having a bed because of
Mhm.
what was going on in the pandemic, what was going on during that time. I'm like, and this is a gentleman that was patient, calm, cool, collected,
Mhm.
im- absolute by far the super impressively calm and collected. We finally got a bed from, brought him there, and that's when I was like, it hit me, because I'm like, we were borderline one step away from not having a place for this patient to be helped.
Mhm. Right.
And we pay taxes for that. And that's when I was like, this is where
Mhm.
the political part really nailed
Okay.
in hard for me. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
Scary moment, but definitely realize that there needs to be more advocacy on this topic as well.
Okay. Okay. So now you're bringing up, so you brought up the excitement of it all and being able, the adrenaline that runs through your body and having to think about all the things and take care of the patient and then now you're bringing up like the politics of it and the things about our system that bother you and that you felt that you needed to start to take more action on that.
Right.
So, right. And so from there, can you talk a little bit about what you do in your business in the Nomadic Nurse Network and building that a little bit? And because I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it all comes from all of that, right? And then, yeah, so let's go there for now. And, there's always other stuff to talk about. There's so much.
Oh yeah, we can keep
Yeah.
on. There's so
Yeah.
much that we can talk about in regards to this. Like, so the biggest thing with Nomadic Nurse Network well, it was originally Nomadic Nurse Agency. Nomadic Nurse Agency is still around, but it's owned by Nomadic Nurse Network, and I'll definitely take you through that journey. So in 2018, I went to my first women's entrepreneurship conference, hosted by Maddie Kay, actually. And
Okay.
when I first went to the conference, I won four free tickets, front row tickets, and I'm listening to all the speakers, and it was so empowering, because I'm like, I can do this.
Right.
I can do this. I can be in this position, but a lot of people don't see nursing at that time especially was not viewed in a way of like it was very much doctor nurse. And at the same time, like we're professionals. There's nothing wrong with a doctor, but we're all professionals doing very different things to do or to work on the patient collaboratively. Like that's what it all comes down to. And it was just I learned I had to work really hard on trying to advocate for the voices of nurses at that time. So I came up with the hashtag advocacy for nurses, where it was all about talking about the system and talking about all like we would communicate like this would be one of our platforms to connect and make sure that nurses had a place to recover from burnout or also have a place to give great insight and how to help others in their field. And when I stepped into that conference, it changed my entire perspective of what nursing could be. But I'm like, I need to create a community or I need to connect with people to start to see how I can create a business out of it. I did probably about a year and a half of proper marketing, network marketing, communicating with people, just connecting with people and seeing what are they doing. These types of things take a lot of research, especially if you don't go to business school. I've never went to business school. We didn't
Mhm.
study marketing in business school. We didn't study any of that. So I had to find a
Mhm.
way to get innovative and creative with the profession that I had that we were technically it was frowned upon to be on a social media platform and talking about these types of things. It was highly frowned upon, and it's in some ways it still is, but a lot more accepted, depending on where you are. And this is when I finally gathered enough data and enough connections and spoke to enough people and developed relationships with people, says, okay, well, what can I do from this? How can I help people from this, from outside of just the bedside? How can I help nurses? That was the original thing. How can I help nurses? Because we go off and help people all the time, but how can I help nurses in these moments? I graduated, I become an emergency room nurse. I absolutely adore it. And then I all of a sudden want to tap into business. Like I have zero experience. Zero. Like they're like, who is this little nurse girl in Montreal who wants to just put themselves out there and find ways of wants to open a business with a nurse? So I ended up starting off as a mobile nursing company. We were
Right.
originally prior to the pandemic, we were going to be emergency services for events. So I lined up meetings, I started connecting with people, and we were going to offer nursing services, medic services at festivals, events, all that stuff. And then I did more research and I found out that the nurses at Osheaga are volunteering, which I heard that I was
Oh,
shocked. I would,
mm,
you won't catch me volunteering my
mm,
time. And the reason why, and I say, like, you won't catch me volunteering my time at a place like Osheaga for many reasons. Number one, that's my license. That is my license.
mhm,
Number two, I understand it's servanthood and you should be able to serve others and stuff, but in a place like Osheaga, it gets so risky because when they come to my emergency room, a lot of the times they're beyond intoxicated or they're beyond
mhm,
injured or they're beyond like they need so much care that if we have medics on that field, like your license is so at risk, it's
mhm.
absolutely it's for me it's a complete it can go really sour very quickly.
Interesting.
And keep in mind, in a place like Osheaga, you're distant. So there's things like that where I was like, we need to enforce the role of the nurse. We need to show the importance of the role of the healthcare professional in that situation. And we
Mhm,
cannot cheap out on it because one, it's everybody's time, and two, you're hiring a licensed professional to do the job. So
mhm.
it's bringing back the value of the healthcare professional as well. And then when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden my business model that I came up with,
Mhm.
gone. And I
Right.
had to pivot.
Yeah.
I I had enough connections with labs. I had enough connections with people to say, okay, well, we're gonna go mobile. We're gonna offer
Yeah.
service across the city of Montreal. So
Yeah.
we offered COVID tests, rapid COVID tests. We did also blood tests. We did also other nursing services across the city. And my car racked up so much mileage.
Yeah.
It was insane. And I ended up getting a team. I hired a
Yeah.
team. We had about 20 nurses, and when we were going off helping and the helping the community. And the biggest thing is that what this was originally supposed to do was just to be a band-aid for me to transition into something else. But it
Right.
ended up being a band-aid that became a bandage, which became a big thing, which ended up staying for like 4 years.
Yeah.
So we did great during that time, and I'm truly blessed. And we also started working with pharmacies and clinics to and offering nursing services for their clients.
Yeah.
And that part of the job we still do today, and we still offer the mobile services, but in a different perspective. And Nomadic Nurse Network came about because of a complete funny accident of I wanted to expand this nationally, and that's where this
Okay.
started.
Wow. So, you're talking about it and you're so excited about it.
Yeah.
Like that energy, where is that energy coming from, Melanie? Like, where is it? Like, if you think about it for a second, where is all that energy coming from? Do you know? Have you ever thought about it? It's exciting. I'm excited just listening to you.
It's exciting. The energy is coming from a place that's been around for like 13 years. I've been wanting to do something like this for a very long time. I've always wanted to offer the community something bigger. And it's just, I do believe that after everything that I've worked hard for in my career as a nurse, I think that but also go after everything that I've gone through during my career as a nurse, I've also been through some really challenging times as a nurse, like heavy, heavy, heavy stuff that I haven't really spoken about publicly. And it's slowly finding ways of coming up. But the thing is that with that, I think it's important that we understand that the fire comes from servanthood. It comes from trying to find different ways of helping different types of people. Like Nomadic Nurse Network isn't just for the patient, it isn't just for the professional, it's for all. We all think that just because you hear nomadic nurse, it's not for the pharmacist, it's not for the doctor. No, I'm the nomadic nurse, but you can be the nomadic whatever you choose. And I know that nomadic is like going from one place to another, but when are we ever staying in one place in our lives? We're not, because that would be the destination. Otherwise, it'd be a destination. That's not what God created us to be. Is to just stay at a destination. We're meant to go on the journey. So all of us are nomadic in many ways. So the excitement comes from the spirit within that God has given me, I would even say.
You have been talking a lot about that lately.
Yeah.
Um, and I find it's beautiful when you talk about it. And I find that when you do talk about servitude and you do talk about God and your belief in God and what it's given you and your life, I'm so happy for you. I get really excited for you. So if you want to spend another couple of minutes, maybe sharing a little bit about that, I'm holding that space for you right here, right now, if you'd like to. Yeah, yeah.
So I was saved 2020 January of 2023. Um, I think that it's a very important thing that we talk about faith because we can talk all the logic that we want and how we save patients' lives, but at the end of the day, it's a hospital. A hospital is a place for the broken physically and even spiritually. I've seen that on so many occasions. If you are a healthcare professional and you have not experienced had any spiritual experience as a healthcare professional, I'm sorry, like especially when you're in a hospital, especially in a hospital, I,
Mhm.
you're not doing it right. I'll tell you that right now. And the reason why I say that is because the amount of nurturing and empathy as a healthcare professional that you must have, it's a very
Mhm.
demanding compared to profession. It's extremely deep. And when I got to a point of apathy in my career, that's when I realized that was when I was probably the healthiest in my career, but spiritually drought. Spirit, because at one point, that's when I realized that the system was also failing us as well. You
Okay.
end up going into this space of machinery, and we're not meant to be machines as healthcare professionals. You cannot design a healthcare system that has significant cuts that makes you become machines. We are not machines
Mm,
in any shape, size, or form.
mm,
So when I developed that apathy, and I'm being told that the apathy is kicking in, and then I'm realizing that it's happening more and more and more, and then my body started to physically respond to that. My body
mm.
started to respond to the traumas of my career, of my life, of, we all go through things. And then
Yeah.
one day I had to realize I'm trying to seek all this rest. Okay, well, I'll take a bubble bath. Okay, well, I'll go to a hotel and do a staycation because it was the time of the pandemic. Okay, I'm gonna do let's do this. Let's do all these things, these
Right.
self-care things
Right.
that I believed, and in a way they're still a part of self-care. Not saying that there's a
Hmm.
different relation, they do, but there's nothing that has given me a better rest than spiritual rest. There's
Okay.
nothing better than that. I ended up trying to find ways of searching and searching. I'm searching and searching, like, why am I not rested? Why is my body still having struggles trying to relax? Why do I have to always be on the go? I can manage my schedule as much as I can. I
Right.
can time block. I can do all these things to make sure that I am not bothered, but I still found myself going back to the
Yeah.
same habits,
Yeah.
leading down this chronic fight or flight method.
Got it. You were going
Because,
into burnout. You were going
oh,
into burnout.
oh yeah, yeah. And here's the thing, I wasn't my first time in burnout. I've been in burnout. I had to be off of
Right.
work 3 months. I've
Yeah.
been in burnout before.
Yeah.
So I knew what territory, but I was heading in, but the difference is that I was not like, I didn't know how to fix it because I was like, there's nothing in this physical world that can do it. So
Yeah.
one day I showed up at a friend's place. He called me very randomly with it, and he's like, I need help or for something medical. I'm like, yeah, sure. I haven't spoken to this guy in years. I pull up at the house. I see the family. Oh, hi. It's like it's like it's like rekindling a whole thing. And these were people that were very in tune with, like, grew up very Christian.
Yeah.
And their aunt was my mom's best friend, and she grew up very
Mm.
Christian. And that day convicted me heavily, like, God, and they didn't say nothing to me that day. They didn't nothing happened. It's just I felt something different. I felt safe. I felt home. I felt relaxed. And I'm like, I haven't felt this comfortable in a long time.
Mm.
So I left, kept on going, and then finally one day I found myself in my journal, and I started journaling probably September of 2023. And
Mm.
I'm like, I will find myself in my journal all confused. And then January hits, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm weeping in my journal. I'm
Mm.
crying. I'm like, I don't know what to do. It's 2 a.m. And I drove myself all the way to my childhood spot where I used to go and, like, watch this moon used to hit the lake so perfectly, all the way out in St. Lazare. I used to sit there, and I was like, and I'm praying. I'm like, God, like, I don't know who you are. I know who you are, but I don't think you've heard of me in a long time. And I'm sorry, but we need to, I don't know what to do right
I'm back. I need you.
now. I'm
I need to know you.
I need to know you. I'm like, I don't
Okay.
know what's happening. I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know what I'm feeling, but I know something is
Mm.
very wrong.
Yeah.
Physically, spiritually, mentally, like, there's something very, very wrong.
Yeah.
And
And
it
so
was at a
it's
time
giving you
where
energy.
And
Yeah.
at that time, everyone would have thought that I was in my peak. That was
Mm.
the most interesting part. And and God was like, follow me. I ended up going to church, and I haven't stopped going to church ever since. Uh,
Wow.
it's been all about God's been so gracious with me, and he's been peeling back the layers with me of like things I need to work on, the dross in my life, and saying you need to work on this, you need to heal from this. And he's showing me things about myself where he's like, I'm just here to polish this part. Like, don't worry. I'm here to help
Right.
you become a better entrepreneur, better servant. Like now I don't do my business without God in consideration. I'm
Yeah.
working on finding ways to make sure that it always stays consistently like that. But every decision that I make, I let the for us in Christianity, we believe in the Holy Spirit. I let the Holy Spirit take it. I'm like, okay, God, where do you want this to go? Where are
Uh-huh.
we going with this? It's been the easiest, most peaceful, that surpasses beyond understanding methods of how I've run my business. And it's just the way I'm exactly where I need to be, want to be, and all those things. So,
Wow.
and that's
Yeah.
that's the business part of it. Like
Yeah.
I had, I have PCOS. I was gaining weight at such an exponential level.
Mhm.
I was gaining weight. I was gaining, like, at one point I was clocking 10 pounds a month, like going up. Like I was gaining 10 pounds a month at one point, like for the past, like for 4 months. And I was just like, okay, like I know I'm diet. I don't know what to do. That is a full sign of my fight or flight system not being at full rest.
Yeah.
And ever since I found I've been regulating my spirit, my physical body has game changer. Like,
Wow.
you need, yes, you need food, you need water, you need exercise, but you
Of
need a
course.
calm nervous system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
You can't have these
We can
dopamine
have
every single time.
we can have an episode of each thing that we're talking about. So so I'm so happy for you that you found this and that it's grounded you and that you go there to take care of yourself and to not only take care of yourself because you're also taking care of so many others. And so just tell us a little bit about your podcast,
So
please.
yeah, the podcast is called Nomadic Nurse Podcast. We talk about faith, we talk about health, we talk about all of the above with glory from the God from up above. We are here
Okay.
to but this is a place to welcome all. I know that this
Mhm.
is something that's very abnormal for my viewers, but I'm trusting God on this path for this. And but we are here to talk about anything from faith, entrepreneurship, from health, from for the patient, for the healthcare professional, burnout, the list goes on. So
Yeah.
we're here to just make sure that we stay grounded in our purpose and identity that God has given us, as well as answer to our purpose and calling.
Yeah. And so I'll put obviously the links, when I put this up, I'll definitely put the links to your podcast. And I wanted to congratulate you on that. It's amazing. And the marketing is gorgeous, of course, because you're so good at all that stuff and
Thank
social
you.
media and it's great. And it's gonna grow like you've been growing and nomadic, right? It's that word nomadic. I love it. That's a big thing that I picked up in this podcast episode for sure. It's that word nomadic. It's important. It's big. It has a
Yeah.
lot of meaning to it. So now, like just as we're coming to the end of our time together, um, what message would you like to leave with people, whether it's about health or whether it's about when they're in the hospital or anything. What do you think that or this podcast is people, their passion and purpose. So um maybe you want to talk about that for a second and leave people with that, purpose, passion,
Your,
what you do.
your purpose is not your identity. Your identity is who God created you to be and who He's loved you to be. Your purpose is what He's asked you to do to help serve the people.
Okay.
And your duty on this earth is to find your purpose that God has given you because he loves you and he wants you to identify it for yourself and not feel like it's I want you to be a doctor. He's not that type of parent. He's not that type of he's not that God. He's a God
Mm,
that loves you and he's a God that wants you to step into what he wants you to find what you're meant to do. Like for me it was nursing and it was setting
mhm,
that that lady who was in the Holocaust to tell me that story to start the fire.
mhm,
And there, listen to those little moments, pay attention to those little moments because your purpose is in all those moments that we take for granted. We don't have to run at a fight or flight method. We can rest and digest a little bit. But your purpose and calling, it's not your identity because your identity is the good person that you've been created to be. Your purpose and calling will be something that you will find, and it's the biggest treasure. And talk to God about it. And don't be ashamed of the faith that you carry. Don't be ashamed of of who you are, because there will be people that will tell you things that will not necessarily they'll will not necessarily be in a place of helping that purpose, but don't blame them. There are people that either have to work on themselves in regards to that, but your purpose is something is between you and God. And never put the gift above the giver.
never put the gift above the giver.
Mhm.
Never put the gift above the giver.
Mhm.
Think about the giver.
Mhm.
It's not about the gift, it's about the giver.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Wow. Okay. Well, you're a busy woman and
Yep.
you've just spent a really nice amount of time with us. So I really appreciate it. And it's great to see you. And I hope everyone learned a lot from this episode. There's a lot of information and a lot of things to think about. And thank you so much for joining us. We're here with Melanie at People, Their Passion and Purpose. Thank you, Melanie, so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And we'll see
Thank
you
you.
all soon.
Thank you for having me.